Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri Ezri me'im Adonai Oseh shamayim va'aretz Ezri me'im Adonai Oseh shamayim va'aretz I lift my eyes up to the mountains From where does my help come? I lift my eyes up to the mountains. From where does my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and of the earth. My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and of the earth. Esainai el harim me'ayin yavo ezri Esainai El harim me'ayin yavo ezri.
Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, our God and God of all generations. Thou who governest all things with infinite wisdom and mercy, and who guidest the destinies of all of humankind. As a parent have you loved us and showered your blessings upon us. Therefore we shall not murmur even when sorrow befalls us, but with humility and unfaltering trust we shall accept your decrees. In joy and in sorrow alike, we praise your goodness and acknowledge your justice. We remember that we are but strangers upon earth. Like a shadow, our life flees away. Help us, O God, so to walk in your sight, that when the few years of our earthly pilgrimage are ended, we may be ready to meet our end with tranquil mind. To thee we look for comfort and strength when one of our beloved is taken from us and a link is broken in the chain of love which binds us together. Though we walk in the valley of the shadow of death, we shall fear no evil, for you are with us. Be praised, O eternal our God, in all your dispensations, and sanctified be your name, now and forevermore. Let us all say together, Amen. Poet has written, birth is a beginning and death is a destination. But life itself is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness and from ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or from strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, and from fear to faith. From defeat to defeat until looking forward or ahead. We see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death is a destination. Life itself is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life that is everlasting. This part of the service, we call it the liturgy, very often, especially in Jewish tradition, but in other traditions as well, one of the most important pieces that is used is the words of the 23rd Psalm. King David is the one who is supposedly to have written the book of Psalms. And I learned a long time ago when I was a rabbinic student from one of my professors that King David had something very special in mind when he wrote the psalm. It wasn't just, and we don't just use it because it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. We use it because King David was trying to give a message to mourners, to those people who really are affected most by the death of a loved one. And he was trying to say to them, don't get stuck in the valley of the shadow of death. You have to walk through it. No matter when it comes, no matter how difficult it is, it's important to walk through it. So we're going to call now again on Steve, our Cantorial Soloist, to chant the words, and then I think he'll probably have you read them with him.
Adonai roi lo echsar bino deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'magle tzedek, yancheni v'magle tzedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech begetz mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamu. Ta'aroch lefanai, shulchan neged sorirai, dishanta vashem roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, Adonai roi lo echsar. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever.
I'd like now to call upon Jennifer to share some thoughts because she knew him so very, very well.
First, I want to say thank you to Brett and Andy for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I am so honored to address such a wonderful crowd filled with familiar faces, paying respects to one of the most wonderful people I have ever known. A man, a father, a son, a brother, a Zadie, a businessman, a colleague, a friend, a mensch. I've worked with Byron for over 13 years across all of his business ventures. When we had meetings in the conference room, I would joke that I sat at the right hand of the Father. The Christians in the audience will get that one. Over the years, we became family. When I got engaged to my husband, also named Byron, he started referring to himself as Byron too. When we found out through an ancestry DNA test that my husband is 25% Jewish, Byron joked that that's why he always liked him so much. He helped pay for our wedding. He was one of the first people to hold both of my children. We even considered Thomas as a middle name for our son. I learned so much from him over the years, not just in business, but in life. He used awesome old-timey sayings, like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Cooler heads will prevail. And my personal favorite, that guy's a hot can of pop. Byron was vintage and cool. He went drinking at the bars in 5 Points Warehouse District when he was in high school because they didn't ID. He volunteered for John F. Kennedy's 1960 presidential campaign. He saw Frank Sinatra perform. He saw Elvis twice. His brother was E Weiss, who once gave him a shout out on Jimmy Kimmel Live while Johnny Depp played guitar in the background. He was frugal, routinely taking on DIY projects around his house, including HVAC and electrical, but was also the most outrageous tipper I've ever seen. He was stubborn, always doing things on his own terms, but also always putting others' needs before his own. He embraced change and new technology. He told me once that back in the 1980s, he was convinced that fax machines were as good as it could get. And in the 90s, he thought that email was as good as it could get. But as technology evolved, so did he. He started using AI routinely over the last year, despite my skepticism, and happily drove around town in his self-driving car. Born and raised in Denver, he saw it grow from a cow town into what it is today. He remembered everything about the city, the people, the places, the sports teams. Some still here, some gone. He could recall everything down to the most minute detail. Most importantly, he never forgot a name or a face, and he never met a stranger. When he was introduced to people, he always said, "Glad to know you," while shaking their hand, and he meant it. The outpouring of love and support over the last couple of days has been truly staggering and is a true testament to the type of person Byron was. Sincere, kind, generous, wildly funny. a man whose word was gold and whose handshake was as good as or better than any contract. In short, a mensch. May we all strive to live life like Byron did, to make lasting connections like he did, to have a positive impact on others, to love fiercely, and to always strive to do the right thing. Thank you, Byron, for everything, and thank you all for being here today.
Yesterday, when I met with Andy and Brett, I asked them whether they wanted to say anything today, and there wasn't ambivalence about wanting to express their points of view, but there was ambivalence about whether or not they wanted to get up like this and do that. So I said, well, there was another way we could do that, and I said, you could write a letter if you wanted to, and I'd read it on your behalf. So that's what they decided they wanted to do. So I want to read, they're really 3 letters, very short, but they express what his sons were about in terms of this relationship. So first, they wrote the following together. Dad, words can't explain how much we love you and always will. We miss you so much already. You have always been the best dad that we could ever ask for. You've always been there for us, for good or bad times, and whenever and however we have needed you. Your loving, giving spirit is irreplaceable. You've taught us both so much: kindness, honesty, loyalty, integrity, strength, generosity, and the list goes on. And then Brett added, I'm going to miss our 5 a.m. phone calls and talking after every Nuggets and Avalanche game. Coming down to work each and every day will never be the same again. I love you. And Andy wrote, I'm going to miss our daily calls, hanging out at our bench in Cherry Creek, and our dinners. You have been my best friend my whole life. I am so proud to be your son. I love you so much. Short and simple, and yet filled with so much love and devotion. Could feel it as you listen to those words. And so we are grateful to you for sharing those thoughts about your dad, and in some mysterious way to your dad. It's important. And Jennifer, we're grateful to you for your thoughts as well. I know that he meant a great deal to you. This is not an easy time. It never is. It's hard to lose the people that we love. And I don't care when that comes. And I don't really care what the circumstances are, because that separation is hard no matter when it comes, whether a person is young or older. And given the fact that we're just a few years apart, it's young. But the truth is, this is a moment in which you as family, you as his closest friends, and that means all of you, because even at 86, with a sudden death, it's not usual that this chapel is filled. But it is because each of you, in one way or another, had a relationship with him. And you're here to express your condolences to the family. And in some ways, I suppose, it is also to learn ourselves what it means to have those relationships. And so for all of you, you all grieve in some way. No preparation for today. Sudden death is never easy. You didn't have a chance to say goodbye. And that makes it so very difficult, especially for the two of you as beloved sons. But yet, this is also a time of bittersweetness. Bitter because death has come. I understand that. But there's also a sweetness to the fact that he didn't suffer. No, it's all right. Next time, it better be turned off. No, I'm just... It reminds us that he did not have to suffer. Didn't have a prolonged illness with pain. Oh, I realize that at 86, every day is filled with different pains. I know that. But the truth is, he did not have that prolonged kind of illness. And so there is a sweetness to this day as well. It reminds us of how sacred this time is and our purpose on this day. I want to read a poem to you because I think it, and I'll share this with you in a moment, but why I think that. But this is a special day for memory. Poet wrote, "There are stars up above so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we will remember." And I think that these words, at least for me, have a very special meaning on this day. I'm sorry. I didn't know that. Oh. Anybody else? They were supposed to tell me, but they didn't. Okay. Please, I'll finish later. Come on. I apologize.
I don't need to speak.
You're here.
Okay. Whiz and I were first cousins. His mom and my dad were sister and brother.
Excuse me, but if you're going to speak closer to the microphones and a little louder. As long as we can all hear you.
Whiz and I were first cousins. His mom and my dad were brothers and sisters, which makes me the end of the Rolnicks. I'm the last one standing. We were born a month apart. I was in November, he was in December. And we used to kid one another that who was the oldest. I always said he was the oldest. And he said, no, he wasn't. These are just a few of the memories that I remember of growing up with him. I remember at his bar mitzvah, my cousin from Kansas City and I served the punch, and we had a picture taken, and we all looked like we were 2 years old. Couldn't get over it. Then one night I spent the night there. So Chucky and Whiz and Aunt Jeannette and Uncle PG took pots and pans, banging them, and walked around the house to welcome me to spend the night. So we had some really good memories. One time we went to a big dinner party that one of our cousins gave at a restaurant. We were all through with dinner, and the dessert menu came, and it was in a leather binder. So I handed it to Whiz, and I said, Whiz, this is the bill. He didn't say one word, took his glasses out, opened it up, and he said, "Boy, you really got me this time." We took comfort in one another. We talked to each other about business, about family. We had the same banker, the same eye doctor, the same medical doctor, and we would review everything with one another. And I remember when Aunt Jeannette passed away, I was in New York, and I came right from the airport with my suitcase, walked into the house, gave him a hug, and I said, "How you doing, honey?" He said, "Better now." Without losing a beat, his one-liners were unbelievable. Chucky and Paula Moscow were walking up the walk, and they both had the same hairdo. And I said to Wizzy, Chucky and Paula are here. And he said, "Which one's Paula?" He always had these one-liners. He always wanted everyone to be happy and well. He was the first one to the hospital or the first one over at your house. He had not one mean bone in his body. He was the sweetest, kindest, most loving person and caring, and he didn't want anyone to be upset. Even to the point of one day I was talking to him and his dog was chewing on a squeaky doll. And I said, "Whiz, can't you take that away from him?" And he says, "I can't." And I said, "Why not?" He says, "'Cause he's happy." And that was Whiz, always, always caring about everyone. And I'm gonna miss him forever.
Susan? Oh, who is it? Oh. You were supposed to tell me about all of them, but that's okay. Bob, where is he? There he is, okay. Sorry about the interruption this way. And I promise I won't start from the beginning again.
Wow. Jen set a pretty high bar there, talking about the Whiz. Chucky and I were buddies, and when I met Chucky, he had this reputation of being a real tough guy. And so we got to East High School, and I was asking around, "Where's this Chucky Weiss?" And somebody said, "Oh, here he comes down the hall." That's a tough guy. He's barely 5 feet tall. One of the toughest guys I ever met. So through Chucky, I got to meet Whiz and got a job managing the record center in Boulder. And the thing about Whiz was whenever Chucky and I were getting on with PG, trying to run a game on him or something, Whiz would just walk by. Just, who are these clowns? Dad, please don't fall for any of this. Whiz always just sort of kept an eye on us. And then when we got up to the record center, Whiz knew that everything would be cool, so Rosie was always keeping an eye on us. So we always had what I call proper adult supervision. And Whiz was, like everybody said, he was a guy with the biggest heart, kindest, gentlest person that you could ever meet or call a friend. Excuse me, I got this little hay fever. My eyes start watering now and then. So Chucky got sick, and Whiz and I sort of took turns going out to L.A. and checking on him. And after Chuck passed, Whiz and I really got close. And he was just such a great human being. And we had this wonderful time to grow up. Working at the Record Center in the mid-'60s and late '60s was like having a money machine, because everybody wanted the music, everybody wanted to pick it up. So we made Whiz proud, I think, of taking care of the business as we should. And it was a time of civil rights and stopping a war, and it was just a good time to be young. And Whiz was there, sort of like a little supervisor, making sure we weren't having too good of a time. Every time I left Whiz, last thing we said was how we loved each other. So, I love you, Whiz.
Thank you both for your kind words and for our understanding of who he was to at least two more people, because he was special, as we all are, and we understand that everybody has a unique place in the world, but maybe in some ways he was a little bit more unique than others, and I want to share my own story with you. You know, our task at a moment like this is to learn from the past, to learn from the people that have been a part of our lives in one way or another. And just like the poem about the stars, understand that somewhere along the line, what it is that they did in our relationship will be remembered somehow, some way. Now, I have to tell you that in so many ways, I do this a lot. And I have to tell you that as I see my role as a rabbi, my task at a moment like this is not just to be the introducer, whether I did or didn't know them correct, that doesn't matter. Not just to be the introducer, it's also my sense of being a rabbi at a moment like this, and I've done this just a few times, is also to give advice when I can, to bring some comfort to a family because of what maybe I've learned from that person, whoever that person was. Sometimes I don't know the people that have passed away. And sometimes I knew them, but I wasn't intimate friends with them. But they had an impact upon me. I was not an intimate friend of Whizzy's. Well, we were friends, and he certainly was a part of my life. And his kids are certainly a part of my kids' lives. So we've known each other. But I have to tell you that I learned a lesson from him 5 years ago when his brother died. And I want to share that with you because it was important to me and continues to be. Somebody said to me earlier today, it's time you get a new book. This is my rabbi's manual. It's my third one. But in the back, I have some notes, sometimes and some poems, some things that I use from time to time when I'm doing this. This all has a purpose, by the way. These are the 2 notes that I kept from Chucky's funeral. And I kept them and I use them from time to time. You know, sometimes people will say, oh, you rabbis, you said that at so-and-so's. That's true. There is nothing new under the sun, but sometimes we take little notes from here and little notes from there, and sometimes it works and it fits. 5 years ago, I met with him, and he told me about his brother, whom I didn't know very well at all. And in the process of talking to me about him, and these are my words, not his, but they are based upon what I learned from him. And if anybody wants to look at this later, I'll show it to you. What I learned from him. These are my words. He taught me that a person is not a person because of what he or she did. They did what they did in life because of the kind of person they were on the inside. And I have to tell you, it's an important insight, was for me. And I use it quite often in trying to share with families the importance of these moments, or the importance of the spaces, or the importance of the memories. Because we learn about an individual, yes, because of what they did, but they did what they did because they were the kind of person that they were. He taught me that, and I'm grateful that he did. And I know that, I've been here 55 years, and I've only came upon that understanding in the last 5 or 6 years since your uncle died. But it was an important lesson for me. And I hope that it becomes an important lesson for all of us. Because that is who we are, that makes us do the things that we do. And in listening to his family, listening to Jennifer and Susan in the last couple of days, I learned a lot about him that was really very special. So it makes me pause to understand who he was and how to try in some little way to pass that on to you guys. And because there's not another generation to take over, we have a task before us for ourselves. We have to do that a little bit ourselves. We can't just depend upon his 2 sons. We have to depend upon all of us to take some of what he was in this world, who he was, to pass that. You don't have to take her out. Okay. But she's welcome to stay. She didn't bother me. To learn who he was so that we individually can pass some of that on to others. And I think you know who he was as you related to him as individuals. The stories that we've just heard, they're important stories because they involve human beings who learn from one another. The spot where we will bury him is next to his brothers. That's sacred space. Not just because a body is there, but because his immortality is there. And that depends upon each of us in some small way to influence another generation because of who he was in his generation. So it makes us pause to see who he was, not just what he did, not just the records or the golf carts, the batteries, whatever it was that he did. It's to understand that he went from place to place to place because of how he wanted to be seen in life, because of who he was as a human being. Yes, he was born and raised here. He loved this place. Went to Hallett and he went to East. He went to Boston University and to CU. Those are things that he did. Those are the ways in which he may have influenced some of you. But he got started with his father and passed that on to his sons. just a simple way in which we try to have a sense of immortality. He was entrepreneurial in his life. It wasn't just that he went from business to business. He went from place to place, business to business, because he wanted to see those things succeed. And I really do believe this is not a joke. If he was a lot younger, he'd probably be on Wednesday nights, Shark Tank, trying to convince somebody to invest in his business in order to make it succeed. That's the kind of guy he was. He had an understanding of perseverance to make sure that he kept things going. He was patient. He understood that relationships were important, and maybe that's why there's so many of you here today, because you each had a relationship with him. He was loyal, even when it was hard. And sometimes, and we all know this, sometimes it's hard to be loyal when sometimes people disappoint us on the other side. That wasn't for him, though. He tried to make sure that that loyalty was always present. He had a love of people, all of you. And he wanted to do things for them, for you, because that's who he was. He was present, and especially for you guys. He was present in your lives. He didn't just pass it off as something, well, like, I'm sorry, I missed that game or I missed that opportunity. He was present. It's an important personality trait to pass on to the next generation. He was kind and gentle, thoughtful. He thought before he spoke so as not to hurt someone else. That was important for him. You said he had integrity. He was honest. What could be better than to be remembered as an honest human being? He saw equality from the doorman to the millionaire. We're all human beings. And he was one of those people who understood that. Maybe that was just part of what he was born with. I don't know. But the truth is, it was a part of who he was. He had respect and love for your mom and for Sandy. A very important thing to remember that. Because regardless of what history is, they still had respect for one another. And I have to tell you, last year, my wife and I had dinner with your mom and Sandy in Palm Springs. Half the discussion, well, more than half was about you two, but a lot of it was about your dad and the respect that they had for him. So that was a two-way street. Even when there are difficulties in life, they understood, and he understood, that they wanted to make sure that you saw them as friends. He was a visionary. As you said, he was a visionary for Rhino and other places that were in his portfolio. It's important for us to remember that he didn't forget about what the vision might be and how things could be better in life. He was a wise soul, and that's why I told the story about how he in fact affected me. That was wisdom on his part that he was willing to give to another person. And it was there. And it's still there. And I personally still use that wisdom as I can. I don't always attribute it to him. Now maybe I should have to, but I don't always, but I do attribute it to him in terms of my own thinking. That's why I saved those cards, because I wanted myself to know that he taught me these many years ago. And so he lived life on his terms. good man, whose memory we hope will always be a part of your lives, and that you will transmit that memory to another generation. It's important that we do that. It's not enough to just say goodbye. It's only enough when we say, we're not saying goodbye, we're saying, live on. Be a part of someone else's life. So I want to close with this beautiful poem that I read very often as well, because I think it's real, I think it's true. Poet wrote, when I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around others and give them what you need to give me. You can love me most by sharing your joys and multiplying your good deeds. You can love me most by letting me live in your eyes and not in your mind. And when you say Kaddish for me, remember what our tradition teaches. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. It is in that spirit that we resolve to face our grief, without self-pity, but with bravery and integrity, keeping before us forever the blessings that God conferred upon us in this life that he but lent to us for these many decades. And in a world where our most precious goods are perishable, let us resolve to honor our beloved dead by being so good to the living, so kindly, so understanding, so forgiving, so transcendent of pettiness, that in our love for him we shall hearken to those who remain and who need us and our strength. May it be through new relationships and new service to humanity that we make good our loss, and in the beauty of our own lives, erect the noblest monument to our mourned dead. And thus the beauty of his life shall ever abide among us all as a living and loving benediction. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach me'ata v'ad olam. God has given, God has taken away. Praise be the name of God, now and forevermore. And let us all say together, Amen. And now, dear family and friends, may I ask you all, please, as you are able, to rise for the traditional memorial prayer. That's all finished.
El male rachamim, shochen b'mromim. Hamtzei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina. Im kedoshim utehorim, kezohar harakia mazhirim. Et nishmat yakirenu, Byron ben Arya Omero, shehalach leolamo. Bal harachamim, yastirehu beseter knafav leolamim. Veyitzror bitzror hachaim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato, ve'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen.
O God, full of compassion, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence unto Byron Whiz Weiss, who has entered into eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou his possession, and may his repose ever be peace. And let us all say together, Amen. may be seated. Dear friends, the family wishes us to let you know that they will observe a period of mourning beginning immediately after burial at Monroe Point, 333 South Monroe. Yeah, good. Thanks, David. 333 South Monroe. And we will have a minyan there immediately following interment. So before the meal of condolence, there will be a minyan. So we ask you, dear friends, if you're going to the cemetery, know that if you want to participate in that minyan, which is a short service so that the family can say Kaddish again, please hurry to Monroe Point. And then after the minyan, there will be a meal of condolence. They will be there tonight until 6 p.m. And then tomorrow they will be there from 1 to 5.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our service here at Temple Emmanuel. We will have burial at Emmanuel Cemetery. We do have an escorted procession today, so if you'd like to join us for interment and in that procession, we'll ask you to return to your cars as quickly as possible and have your hazards on in addition to any daytime running lights. That will help the escorts identify you as a participant in that procession. We're going to use the southeast exit of the synagogue's parking lot to start lining up. If you're not going to the cemetery, if we can ask you to maybe take your time getting back to your car, or if you do need to leave quickly, if we can ask you to use the northeast exit of the synagogue. We'll ask you to remain in your places as we escort the casket and family out to their car. If you do happen to run into them in the hallway, foyer, restroom, please know that they need to get to the cemetery, so give them the opportunity to do what they need to do. Your condolences will be welcome more at the home than in the hallway or in the foyer. We'll ask you to rise at this time, and if I can invite the pallbearers forward. Pallbearers, if you'll gather around, firm hold of the handles. We're not lifting, we're just going to guide. And fall. Fall. Debbie, you can follow too.
Elohim lanu machashevaos, Ezra tzarot nimsa meod, al kein lo nira behamir aretz, uvemot harim belev yamim, yehemu yechmeru memayo, Yeirasu harim begavato.